Hello friends, Namaste. Welcome back to the Sacred Space. I am your host Preetha Lal, and we spend time here reading the book Eternal Values for a Changing Society by the late Srimad Swami Ranganathananda ji. As you are aware by now, if you've been following this podcast, that Swamiji was the 13th president of the Ramakrishna Matan Mission, and along with that, he was so much more. He was a scholar par excellence, a spiritual ambassador for India to the entire world, a philosopher, a teacher, a spiritual guru. And so this multi-volume treatise that I've decided to read to you is a beautiful testament to the breadth of his knowledge and the depth of his wisdom. If you're here for the first time and you have chanced upon this episode, you're welcome. We go into the depths of Indian culture, spiritual beginnings, and the philosophy that the Swami has elucidated so beautifully in each of these chapters. In this episode, we will continue reading the chapter we started last time, titled The Philosophy of Eternal Religion. Swami Ranganathananda in this chapter talks about concepts which to me personally feel like the perfect playbook to not only survive but to thrive in the 21st century. As a Hindu from India, I feel I am being reintroduced to my faith with a completely new lens. The Swami discusses the limitlessness of the human spirit, delves into how Vedanta interprets life and religion, and then goes on to concepts of Sanatana Dharma and how Vedanta is a liberating force to be reckoned with. Let us begin. The human, a child of immortality. Brahman as Atman, as the reality behind the ego, gives us a God who, like the extra-cosmic God of monotheism, is not outside of us, nor we of him. He is the soul of our soul, our very self. He is the Pragyatman, the inner self. He is the Antaryamin, the indwelling one, the inner ruler. The finitude of the human is underwritten by the infinitude of God. The human being is divine, and his redemption is, therefore, implicit in his very being. He is not sinful or wicked by nature. He is the child of immortal bliss. Amritasya putra. But this divine nature is remaining covered, lying forgotten. In nature as well as in the human being, there is this mantle of darkness that covers reality, this avidya or maya, which has made us forget our real nature. This veil of ignorance is thick or thin as the individual is pure or impure. Its complete destruction is illumination or perfection. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Matthew 5:8. Every advance in purity is a step in the tearing of this veil, while every impure thought or act thickens the veil and deepens the darkness. Herein lies the meaning of ethics and morality. Every moral action is, as it were, a blow struck on the citadel of our false step, and is a step towards the awareness of our true self. The human being is painfully aware of the bondage of finitude and the limitations of becoming, but in him is also a longing for freedom and the infinitude of being. Vedanta teaches that the soul is divine, only held in bondage by matter. Perfection will be reached when this bond will burst, and the word it uses for it, therefore, mukti or freedom. Freedom from the bonds of imperfection. Freedom from death and misery. The human is thus a complex of freedom and bondage, of the infinite and the finite, of light and darkness. The awareness of the possibility of freedom by the side of the actuality of bondage makes the human being the only restless pilgrim among God's creatures and converts his heart into an abode of constructive peacelessness. Accordingly, his heart has been the venue of a great struggle between these two forces ever since he emerged into self-conscious activity. And the history of human civilization is the arresting story with its ups and downs of this great struggle, occasionally projected on to the plane of his material environment with a view to changing and molding it, but largely conducted in the field of his mental being for fusing it and for forging ahead. The Vedantic interpretation of life. This truth of the ever-present purity and perfection and freedom of his being on the one hand, and his apparent alienation from it due to the veil of avidya, spiritual blindness on the other, has been the one motive force in history, according to Vedanta, behind the human being's spiritual adventures. His hunger and thirst after righteousness, his struggles for the realization of political liberty and social justice. In short, behind all his endeavors to achieve civilization and culture. The brooding of the spirit over the waters of life produces social and political upheavals as much as scientific discoveries, moral achievements, and spiritual realizations. This is the meaning of history in its comprehensive sense. The stirring of the universal in the particular, the vibrations of the infinite in the finite, the struggle of eternity in the meshes of time. To the question as to the origin and nature of the universe, the Upanishads give a significant answer. From freedom it comes, in freedom it rests, and unto freedom it returns. From the philosophical worldview of Vedanta flow certain important corollaries that have become fundamental features of Sanatana Dharma and the source of its spiritual vitality down the ages. They form the inspiration behind the Hindu view of life and explain its appeal to the rational minds in all ages. The Vedantic view of religion. The first impact of this view is on religion. It becomes a matter of experience and not one of mere dogma or creed. The test of religion is anubhuti or realization. Atmava drashtavya. The Atman is to be seen, says Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Spirituality is the core of the religion, and the living and moving and having our own being in God, as St. Paul puts it. If the divine realities are true self, if it is not extracosmic, and as such alien to us, the human being's hope for a fuller and better life becomes well-founded, for he can become divine by realizing the divine. And this is the purpose and goal of life according to Vedanta. If God were outside of us and far away, we could content ourselves with just a belief in his being and conduct our life as best as we may say in its light. Such a faith, while inspiring us with a moral fervor or a group discipline, may also breed narrowness of outlook and active intolerance. While proclaiming itself as a universal religion, it may function no better than an aggressive tribal faith. It is more fitted to sustain the individual in his national egoisms and group loyalties than to inspire him with a Godward passion and a manward love. Religion at this level is a matter of injunctions and prohibitions of belief and conformity. It does not light the inner fire nor appease the hunger of the spiritual heart for the bread of life. Such a view of religion cannot explain the supreme phenomenon in the history of men and women being moved by a strange hunger for spiritual awareness and certitude, by a feeling of homesickness for the infinite and the transcendental. The awakening of this hunger is the very beginning of religion according to Vedanta. Religion ceases to be a pious belief or a matter of conformity and convention at this stage. It becomes a spiritual adventure, with the delights and perils attendant on an adventure, and the human being enters into a world of wider horizon, larger perspectives, and deeper meaning than what the low-roofed world of monotheism could provide. A hungry person cannot live on words or even on faith and food. He eagerly desires to get at the food and eat it. He will strain every nerve in that direction and even court death in the attempt. The conception of religion as an awakening of spiritual hunger involves also the conception of the struggle to satisfy that hunger. We are at once introduced to the concept of sadhana, or spiritual practice, which converts religion from a thing of opinion and assent to a matter of conviction and endeavor. The spiritually awakened ones, says the Gita, transcend the sphere of the words of scripture to them. Creeds and formulas are as stones to a hungry person. The statement of Jesus from the Corinthians that, and I quote, "the letter killeth, but the spirit giveth life," unquote, conveys a meaning only to them. How can the words of scriptures satisfy us when what we seek is the meaning behind all words and all thoughts? The spirit, in forging ahead, leaves all these familiar landmarks far behind. The conception of sadhana is thus fundamental to the Hindu view of religion. It is the dynamics of religion. Infinite becomes the scope of religion, so defined and diverse the forms in which it finds expression. The meaning and scope of religion so understood have been embodied by Swami Vivekananda in the following well-known statement of Vedantic faith. And I quote, "Each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this divinity within by controlling nature, external and internal. Do this either by work or worship, or psychic control, or philosophy, by one or more, or all of these, and be free. This is the whole of religion. Doctrines or dogmas or rituals or books or temples or forms are but secondary details." Thank you, friends, for joining me today in this space. Like I mentioned at the very outset, this particular chapter feels like a reintroduction into my own faith and the relevance of what Swami Ranganathananda talks about so many years ago to today's society. We will continue to get into these concepts more and more as the book progresses, but what is interesting is to know that this particular chapter that we're reading, it was a part of a 2-session talk that Swami Ranganathananda presented over All India Radio in Delhi on 17th and 24th of February, way back in 1950. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me again. Until next time, this is your host, Preetha Lal. Namaste.